Now, in my opinion, there are three names that everybody needs to be aware of because it's these three names that you're going to see repeatedly on the field. One is McAllen Castles. He is a transfer this year. I'll let Rustin talk about him in a second. Jacob Warren, obviously, coming back. This will be his 6th year with Tennessee. So obviously, you got a veteran presence there. A physical person in Jacob Warren, smart person in Jacob, smart, football smart. And then Ethan Davis, who is a true freshman out of Atlanta, Georgia. So, Rustin, what are your thoughts about that position group coming into the 2023 season?
I think you'll actually see 4 tight ends this year. And if anybody gets hurt, you'll see a 5th. I think Josh Heupel has clearly set the tone that he has 2 different types of tight ends. He has a true inline tight end, and Jacob Warren can kind of be a flex guy. He can slide out in the slot too, but he really likes to keep Jacob more inline. And then he has more of a hybrid H-back type tight end, and that was more what Princeton Fant ran this past year. McAllen
to your point, Princeton Fant took handoffs. Like he was, I think an H-back is a very fair position description for him.
So McAllen Castles is basically like a really large fullback. He's 6'5", 235. They'll use him as an H-back. They'll flex him out some in the slot. He'll be an extra blocker on screens, but he can go catch it. He's actually a really good receiver. He's on a lot of NFL draft boards. A lot of people felt like he was the absolute best player they got in the portal, and that he has a massive ceiling, and NFL teams are very interested in him. So I think you'll see him get moved around a lot. They'll find creative ways to get him the ball in space and just let him go be a bulldozer. I think they'll use Jacob Warren like they did this year as an inline blocker, and then on play action, a guy releasing up the seam. He's 6'6", 250. Think about this: when you've got all these big receivers who can all get vertical in a hurry, who does that leave to cover Jacob Warren? Normally a tight end. So, you've got 6'6", 250 releasing, on tight end or linebackers all over the field. It's a tough cover for them, especially when they have to stay home for a second because Tennessee's running backs are so good. Right. So I think you're probably going to see Jacob Warren have a massive year just because there's nobody left to cover him. I think he'll be weirdly open, similar to the way Jalen Hyatt was this year. I think you'll see him be weirdly open at times where you're like, where did the defense go? But they're just picking their poison, and he's going to be just standing there alone.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head when you mentioned that the linebackers have to freeze a second, because every time Tennessee, does play action even from the gun and they fake that handoff there, the linebackers have to freeze for 1 second to make sure they don't hand it off. And in that 1 second, Jacob Warren has a step. Any of them would have a step on that linebacker, and it just takes 1 step.
Yep.
And you're exactly right. I mean, you think about, you got these dynamic weapons on the perimeter on the outside of the field lined up, 20, 30 yards away from the center, lined up outside the hash marks, outside the numbers even. And these poor safeties in the middle of the field, they're having to decide, well, where am I going to go? Like, if I go way out there, the middle of the field is wide open, but they're going to have to decide. And so, here's Joe faking a handoff, freezing the linebackers for a split second, and that's all it takes for Jacob Warren or McAllen Castles or whoever to get 1 step that they need on him, and then right over, like you said, right up the seam, right over the middle. And we saw that happen a few times last year.
Yeah.
And it's pick your poison if you're a defensive coordinator trying to game plan for Tennessee's offense. Yeah. I would hate to be that person trying to game plan against this offense.
So anyway, I think you got 2 different positions, and if we were to look at the depth chart of both, the kind of hybrid H-back receiver tight end is going to be McAllen Castles first, and then Ethan Davis, who is almost a clone of him. They're almost identical in size. Right after him as a true freshman. And I think we'll see Ethan some. I think they'll try to find ways to get him on the field. And then the other side is the true inline tight end, and that'll be Jacob Warren first, and then Hunter Salmon second. We saw Hunter some this past year. They like using him as an extra blocker. He's a great blocker. He's a good aggressive kid, true tight end. And then I'm going to say one other name. If there's an injury, I believe we'll see this kid. I think they would probably like to redshirt him this year so that he is ready next year. But Charlie Browder is a kid that they recruited to Central Florida. He ended up playing for Gus Malzahn. He transferred last year, didn't get to play at all. Just kind of sat and waited his time. But Charlie's a huge kid. He's 6'7", 250. Built very similar to Jacob Warren, really good hands, and he's just kind of biding time, waiting on Jacob to graduate. And if somebody gets injured, I would not be surprised at all if we see Charlie Browder earlier than expected.
Once again, you got a lot of really dynamic options there and a lot of big options there. That's what's so incredible about this offense that we're talking about. All these people we've mentioned, that their size is impressive. It's imposing.
Yeah.
And then, you say, well, what about Squirrel White? He's the only person we've talked about who's not, over 6 foot, and all the different receivers and tight ends we talked about. And he can just run right past. Listen, they can't tackle you if they can't catch you.
Yeah.
And so
Coach Heupel actually commented on that in his press conference today. One of the media guys asked a question. I can't remember what the question was, but his response was, well, you were out there. You saw us. We're physically bigger than probably what you've seen since we've been here. We've recruited size. We're a lot bigger. We look the part. So clearly physically he's looking at the field and going, okay, we've gotten a lot bigger. We're physically imposing now.
So as we mentioned, between tight ends and wide receivers and running backs, the skill positions are absolutely, and quarterbacks, the skill positions are absolutely loaded. Those are the 4 positions we've done so far in our position previews. We will do that. We'll continue to do those. And we appreciate Ginger Marvelous Mouse Travels, gingermmt.com being our sponsor for the position preview series. So we appreciate that. You can find her YouTube channel at youtube.com/gingermmt. And there's her website, gingermmt.com. Totally free to book a trip with her, because you actually pay if you go to like Sandals and Beaches or Universal or Disney. You're actually paying for a travel agent, whether you use one or not, because they build the price of the travel agent into their pricing. So if you just book on your own, they just pocket the money that they would have given to the travel agent. So that's why her services are free to you.